Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Route 1 Rundown. I'm your host, Steve Gorgie, and I'm thrilled to be back for another episode to talk some Terps. But before I dive into everything going on in College Park, a reminder that this show is on YouTube and part of the Department of Hoops, a DMV media network. If you love local basketball, I'm telling you, you're going to love the Department of Hoops. From Terps to Wizards to everything in between, you got to go and check out the Department of Hoops. That's youtube.com/@Department of Hoops. You can also find me all across the internet at the same handle. It's at Gorg on Sports. Whether you're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, I am on it all. So make sure you are following me there at Gorg on Sports. Today, I'm going to be diving into Maryland's 89-82 win over Marquette, everything that transpired in that game, including Pharrel Payne's injury, and that's where we're going to have to start today, because as great as that win was for Maryland, for them to go on the road, for them to eke out that win, for them to do it without Miles Rice in the lineup, without Solomon Washington in the lineup, and then with Pharrel Payne going down with an injury with just over 12 minutes remaining in the game, for them to get that win was unbelievable. And I'm going to get so deep into that because I can't say enough about this team, and I can't praise them enough for the way they responded following that injury, for the way they responded following a really kind of chaotic end of the first half, early second half, and for them to get that win was unbelievable. But when I think about long-term impacts on this season and big takeaways from this game, you have to start with Pharrel Payne's injury. And just to set the stage, if you didn't see the game, if you've only heard about this, let me just set the stage for you. Pharrel Payne has a fast break dunk with a little over 12 minutes to go in this ballgame. And Pharrel Payne is a guy who has, to me, been clearly Maryland's best player all season long. He had 13 points in the 17 minutes that he played against Marquette. I thought they did a really nice job of finding him in the first half and kind of working him into the offense a little bit more. He had gotten in a little bit of foul trouble, and that was a big factor in this game. But when he was on the court, he was phenomenal. 13 points, 6 of 6 from the field, 1 of 1 from the free throw line. So Pharrel Payne is a guy who has been off to an unbelievable start this season kind of picking up where he left off at Texas A&M in the NCAA tournament last year, where he had some really big games. And he's on a fast break. He gets the ball, dunks, and kind of, I think, is trying to avoid coming down on a Marquette player. He kind of swings a little extra, hangs onto that rim, I think a tick or two longer than normal in order to avoid coming down on a Marquette player. Well, not sure exactly what happens from there, but he kind of comes off the rim, lands in what looked like an incredibly painful manner, a manner in which legs and limbs should not go, and on TV you could audibly hear the screams from Pharrel Payne. It was very clear that this is somebody who was in great anguish at that moment. It was just one of those fluke things, one of those weird things that nobody can predict. And Pharrel Payne goes down. He ultimately is stretchered off. He's taken to a local hospital. And if you heard Buzz Williams talk after the game, it sounds like it was a very emotional Maryland huddle. You could see Buzz Williams ran right out there onto the court, because I can only imagine being in the arena, what that looked like and sounded like. But on TV, I mean, it looked horrible. Again, you could hear through the TV broadcast, you could hear Pharrel Payne yelling and screaming. He just looked like he was in an incredible amount of pain there down on the court. And that arena went pretty much dead silent. So an incredibly scary moment in that basketball game. Your heart, how can it not break for a guy in Pharrel Payne who has been Maryland's best player this entire season, who's been off to such a promising start, who looked like he was primed for such big things this year, and he goes down with just over 12 minutes left. Now, we have not received any report at this time on what the injury exactly was. I'm sure Buzz Williams will be asked about it when he does media availability around this Wednesday's game against Mount St. Mary's, but we have not received any firm concrete facts about what Pharrel Payne's injury is at this time. However, if you saw the injury, if you watched the injury, the fact that he was stretchered off, the fact that he was taken to the hospital, the fact that Buzz Williams talked about how emotional it was for him and the team immediately after, I am making the assumption for this conversation that we're about to have that Pharrel Payne is not going to be playing basketball for Maryland the rest of this season. I hope I am wrong. It would be unbelievable if he could come back, but the assumption that I have to make right now until we have more information is that we're not going to see Pharrel Payne in a Maryland uniform again this year. And that is a huge blow to this Maryland team. Again, first and foremost, you feel horrible for Pharrel Payne. That is first, no doubt about it. But then when you think about what this Maryland team looks like without Pharrel Payne, it doesn't paint a very rosy picture for this Maryland team either. Again, I there's no doubt in my mind that Pharrel Payne has been the best player on this Maryland team in this very young season. In 4 games, 21 points against Coppin State, 17 against Georgetown, 22 against Alcorn, and then 13 in the 17 minutes he was able to play against Marquette. He's a guy who his free throw shooting this season had been unbelievable compared to years past. Just under 88% from the stripe, 29 of 23 on the season. This is a guy who shot 58% over the course of an entire season last year at Texas A&M. He was very clearly making some big strides in this game, and he was a guy who was carrying an extraordinarily heavy load for Maryland over the course of this early season. And I had been talking about Maryland's got to tread water until they can get fully healthy. Well, unfortunately, it looks like we may never see Maryland fully healthy if Pharrel Payne is indeed out for the remainder of the season. Again, no concrete confirmed report of that, but that's the assumption that I'm working under right now, is that we are not going to see Pharrel Payne for the rest of the year. And it drastically changes this Maryland season, because not only was he the best player on this team so far, and I think when Miles Rice was in the lineup, we only saw him for in that Georgetown game, but those two guys together were clearly the 2 best players when they were able to be on the court together, and it provided a really interesting inside-outside combo that it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to see. And then you add on to the fact that Maryland is extremely, extremely thin in the front court. When you look at Maryland's other options in the front court, we've seen Elijah Saunders, the transfer from Virginia, play next to Pharrel Payne a lot at the 4 spot, and he's not that much shorter than Pharrel Payne. Pharrel Payne 6'9", Elijah Saunders 6'8", Pharrel Payne 250, Elijah Saunders 240, but he has a very different style of game than Pharrel Payne. He's more of a stretch 4 kind of guy. So when you look at the bigs, it was Elijah Saunders, Pharrel Payne, and then other guys who have gotten some minutes this season are Colin Metcalf, a 6'9" transfer from Northeastern, who is really known for his shot blocking prowess, not much of a scorer at Northeastern in the CAA. I wouldn't expect him to be much of a scorer in the Big Ten, certainly. You have George Turkson, 6'7", redshirt freshman transfer, who came over from Texas A&M with Buzz Williams, and we've really seen him in limited action. He was actually out for the Marquette game, but he's gotten some spot minutes in the first 3 games, 14 minutes against Coppin State, 12 minutes against Georgetown, 9 against Alcorn. Only scored 3 points in those 3 games. And then you look at a true freshman in Alex Alston out of Chicago, who has played sparingly as well early this season. So it's an incredibly thin Maryland front court. And you think about that Maryland team a couple years ago, the 2024 season, Kevin Willard's second year, where they went 16-17, they missed the NCAA tournament. That was a front court that was extremely thin, but it had Julian Reese kind of anchoring it. I kind of looked at this Maryland front court this year, in much the same way, where it was going to be extremely thin, but you were going to have a potential all-conference guy in Pharrel Payne anchoring it. And if they don't have him the rest of the season, I am afraid it's going to be a very long season for Maryland, because I do not know how you go through Big Ten play with the front court that they have, or you go through Big Ten play, you make the best of it, but I don't see how you can do it effectively. But what are the things they might do? Well, one thing that could be interesting is, can they just go small ball? Can they really go small ball, understand that they're going to have a deficit on the glass, but you play Elijah Saunders as a small ball 5? He's a guy who, and I promise you I'm going to get to some of the positives of this game, because, again, I can't praise this team enough for finding a way to win. But Elijah Saunders is a guy who, as you saw in the Marquette game, can step out and hit a 3. He hit a really big one in the second half. He's a guy that has some athleticism. That's a little bit of a trickier matchup on the offensive end, for a traditional Big Ten big, a 7-footer who's going to have to go and chase Elijah Saunders around all game. That could be something interesting that they do. I'd like to see them at least try that at times. Otherwise, it just feels like you're going to be kind of beating your head against the wall, playing a lineup where you either have a very inexperienced guy in Alex Alston, who's probably just not ready for this level. You have a guy in Colin Metcalf who you're really using him for his rim protection and not much else. Like, I just don't think it's fair to expect Colin Metcalf, a guy who was not a scorer at Northeastern, to all of a sudden step into the Big Ten and be a scorer there. But those are all guys that are going to have to step up in various ways. So can you get creative? Can you find a way to make this work and really emphasize what your strengths are? Now, what are Maryland's strengths at this point? It still remains to be seen a little bit, but if we get into this game, the backcourt stepped up in an unbelievable way in the second half after Pharrel Payne went down. In the second half of that ball game, Isaiah Watts, who had been off to a really slow start, did not shoot the ball well at all against Georgetown. He had 11 second-half points. Darius Adams had 9 second-half points. Darius Adams had 10 second-half points. Andre Mills had 9 second-half points. And for the ball game, Diggy Coit, who got off to an unbelievable start in that first half, had 19 points. He was 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. This team actually shot the ball extraordinarily well, 8 of 22 from beyond the arc in this game. So for me, with Miles Rice out, to see those guys, Diggy Coit, Darius Adams, Andre Mills, and Isaiah Watts, all step up and really carry the load offensively for this team, it piqued my interest, because I don't think that's something you can rely on every game, but we know Diggy Coit has that potential. We know what he was able to do in the MAC when he was at Northern Illinois. He is a scorer. He is a shooter. He did not get that chance a ton at Kansas. He played much more limited minutes there, but he still shot almost 39% from beyond the arc on over 100 threes last season with the Jayhawks. This is what this guy does. He can score the basketball, and he can score in spurts. Then you look at Darius Adams, a guy who I've been nothing but high on so far this season. Freshman, McDonald's All-American, and he has shown that ability to be aggressive, attack, and take it to the basket, and we saw it again. He's a guy who puts up 16 points in this game without making a three-pointer. The three-point shooting has been an issue this year, just 2 of 18 for him on the season. I'm not sure whether or not that's going to get better. The shot doesn't look terrible to me, but it doesn't look great either. But if he can attack like he has been, it's something that you can at least work around. Darius Adams has so much potential. You can see what coaches like about his game. Maybe that three-point shooting is something that can, he can work on that jumper a little bit in the offseason and improve in that area. But even without that, it's going to make life hard in the Big Ten if teams don't feel like they have to respect that outside shot from him. But he is really good at attacking and getting to the basket. In the 4 games he's played so far, he goes to the free throw line 7 times against Marquette. He went to the free throw line 12 times against Coppin State. You can just see what kind of threat he can be when he's attacking. And then Andre Mills is a guy who has been a huge surprise for me this season. I did not know what to expect from him. He was a redshirt freshman. He transferred over with Buzz Williams from Texas A&M after redshirting for him in College Station, and he's been a guy who has been a huge surprise this season as well. He also didn't make a three in the Marquette game, but we've seen him make threes over the course of the season. He was 3 of 6 against Alcorn State. He was 3 of 7 against Coppin State. But again, a guy who is, when I don't think Andre Mills, I just think high energy. You just see him flying all over the court, super athletic. So can Maryland use its athleticism, its aggressiveness with that backcourt, and then maybe once you get Miles Rice back, somebody to kind of make it all go, to calm this thing down a little bit, to just run this offense? Is that what Maryland needs to emphasize going forward? I will tell you what, I think it will take a heck of a coaching job from Buzz Williams to figure out how to make this thing go and be successful in Big Ten play without Pharrel Payne. But what we saw against Marquette, we have to spend some time just praising this team for their ability to handle adversity in the game. This is a team, first off, a team that was getting pounded on the offensive glass. Buzz ball, all about offensive rebounding, right? All about getting to the free throw line. Well, Marquette ends up winning the offensive rebounding battle 20-4 in this game. I think at one point it was 20-0. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure at one point second chance points were 17-0. Either way, whatever the exact numbers were, Marquette pounded Maryland on the offensive glass. So Maryland handled adversity in that way. Maryland handled adversity by when they were able to rebound from just kind of it looked helter-skelter at times. We know Shaka Smart. We know, Marquette isn't prime Shaka Smart havoc days, but they still force turnovers. They still speed you up. They're still a tough defense to play against. And there was some times late in that first half, early in that second half, where it just looked like Maryland was missing Miles Rice and the presence that he brings so much, where they just could not run their offense. They had 4 turnovers and 1 made field goal at one point early in the second half. They just looked flustered offensively, and they were able to figure out a way to work around that. And then, of course, the ultimate adversity is you see one of your teammates go down in a way that it's more than your normal basketball injury. It is far more that what happened to Pharrel Payne, or at least the visual of what happened to Pharrel Payne, because we still, again, don't know the full extent of the injury. We don't have an official report on it. It looked far different than your run-of-the-mill basketball injury, whether that's even something like an Achilles, which is extraordinarily serious. It doesn't look like that. So for them to then come back, and at that point in the game, Maryland is down. I think Pharrel Payne's dunk at that point in the game made it, let's see, what did it make it there? 58-53. Maryland had every opportunity in the world without Pharrel Payne, a guy who had been their key force in this game. After seeing that happen to a teammate, to just kind of pack it in and say, okay, let's get back to College Park. They didn't do that. They fought the entire rest of the game. I thought Andre Mills, can't say enough about him. From that point forward, Andre Mills had Maryland's next 5 points in the game. And you just saw a Maryland team that refused to give up, that refused to quit. And no matter what you think might happen the rest of the season, you have to give these guys so much credit for fighting back and finding a way to win this game. And I'm just incredibly happy for them. And I think this team deserves all the praise in the world for being able to find a way to do that, for having these guys like an Andre Mills, like a Darius Adams, like a Diggy Coit, like an Isaiah Watts step up and find a way to win this basketball game. So we will certainly see what it all means going forward, but at least for today, at least for this weekend, Maryland found a way to get a huge road win against a power conference team. Now, there's some more questions about how good Marquette is. I'll tell you this much, Chase Ross is incredibly good. He drops 31 on the Terps. Didn't seem like there was any answer for him. I said it before the game, I'll say it again. That's where you really miss a guy like Solo Washington. Maryland just did not have an answer for him. But again, they found a way to make it work. I certainly have long-term questions. I definitely have long-term questions if they're without Pharrel Payne. But at least for this weekend, you have to just heap this Maryland team with praise for finding a way to go on a road and pick up a big victory. Maryland's next game is Wednesday against Mount St. Mary's. And then after that, they head out to the Players Era Invitational out in Vegas over the course of Thanksgiving week. We know 2 games they'll play right now. They play UNLV at midnight on Monday, November 24th. And then they play Gonzaga, expected to be one of the best teams in the country, number 2 in Ken Pom right now. They already have wins over Oklahoma, Creighton, and Arizona State to start the season. That is going to be a tough test for the Terps. We're going to see a guy that Maryland fans should be familiar with, Tyon Grant Foster, the transfer from Grand Canyon. Maryland saw him in the NCAA tournament last year. He's going to be one of their key players on that team. And then Graham Ike, a guy who's now in his 5th year of college basketball. He feels like one of those guys just been there forever. He's Gonzaga's big man, and he's a guy who is gonna be a challenge for Maryland to defend. So that'll do it for me for the rest of the week. Reminder, big recruiting announcement coming up on Wednesday. Baba Olodotun, the number 10 player in the class of 2026, formerly the number 1 player in the class of 2027, will decide where he's going to school, will make his announcement on where he's going to school. Maryland firmly in the mix there, and it could really give Terps fans something to just grab onto during what now has the potential to be a pretty long season in College Park. So if Baba decides to commit to Maryland, see if I can maybe do something real quick, go live, maybe on X or Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, one of those platforms. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, no episodes the rest of this week. I will be back some point during Thanksgiving week to react to some of what we're seeing at the Players Era Invitational. That's the show for today. And until next time, this has been the Route 1 Rundown.